We are moving in to another section of Genesis chapter 1. We're looking at verses 9 through 25. Now, as we've gone through this study, I've kind of seen three phases of creation. And this week we're moving into a new phase. Phase 1, we see God making and organizing stuff, including the land and sea in verses 9 through 10. Right? He's making space for life. In phase 2, we see God filling the space, filling the land and the sea and the air with the life that he's making. But in this phase, what we're seeing these 5 never before seen attributes which will be essential to God's pinnacle of creation, which is human beings. We're also seeing the why of phases 1 and 2. Why did God create these? And this is the main question that we're trying to answer with our study, right? Why did God make something instead of nothing? And then phase 3, which is again the pinnacle of creation, human beings. What phases 1 and 2 were made in preparation for? Now, due to the large amount of text, we're going to summarize it more so than read all of it. And we'll read a couple of the verses that we're going to focus on. But first, we see verses 9 through 10, where God is finishing this preparation phase, finishing this phase 1 by separating the land and the sea. This is the finalization of the organization of space, time, and matter, so that creation, specifically the earth, is suitable for life. And it answers the question as to why, right? Why did God create phase 1? He made space, matter, and time in preparation for life to exist and live. He is providing a suitable and desirable place for life with space and boundaries and separations and distinctions and purpose. Life needs these things. I mean, imagine living in a place that's not suitable for life. I just think of the Arizona desert, right? Like, people shouldn't live there. Things should not live there. God is creating a place where life can live, exist, and thrive. The universe is being prepared for the arrival of the pinnacle of God's creations. And I think this gives us our point. And the point is this, is that oftentimes God goes before us to prepare for us. And I think this reveals some degree of value of humanity, that phases 1 and 2 are in preparation for humans. But we see God going before us to prepare in 2 ways. We see first that God goes before us to prepare a place for us. We see that the promised land was ready to receive the Israelites, right? For 400 years, people were there and cultivating it, and God was growing it before he brought the Israelites to it. We see Jesus goes to prepare a place for us in his Father's house in John 14. God has already gone before us and prepared the place for us on earth and in heaven. And secondly, God goes before us to prepare us for the place he has prepared for us. You see, God gives us what we need to fulfill his will wherever he calls us. Human beings were designed and prepared to live on this earth that he already prepared for them. Israel was purified in the wilderness for the promised land, for the things that were to come there. The spiritual climate around the ancient Near East was perfect and prepped and ready for the Messiah. You see, preparation doesn't necessarily mean perfect in skill, experience, or wisdom, but in dependence and trust in God. See, humans had to learn how to live on earth, but they had the skills needed. They just had to learn how to develop them and gain that experience and wisdom. Israel, coming into the promised land, they had to be faithful. They had to learn how to depend on God, but they had everything they needed. People during the time of Jesus, they were ready. They just had to believe. And so what we see in this is that when God calls us, we don't need to fear. Everything and everyone has been prepared by God. Verse 11, we see a new phase of creation starting. We see the beginning, the entrance of complex life. And in verse 11, we see 2 out of the 5 never before seen attributes that God is building into creation. You see, in this verse, God is calling forth the vegetation. It's not being created ex nihilo or from nothing. He is rearranging the existing materials within the land to create this vegetation. And in vegetation, what we see are reproduction, number 1, and relationship, number 2. So the first never before seen attribute is reproduction. Plant life now contains the genetic material that allows it to reproduce and create more of itself. So far, nothing else can do that. You see, they're made according to their kinds. They will reproduce according to their kinds. We see an order within the micro world that God is creating, a genetic order. These plants are being created into unique families that will produce the same. And the second never before seen quality is relationship. Plant life is the first of creation to be dependent on other parts of creation, on land, water, air, and light, to fulfill its purpose to reproduce. We see this, the ecosystems now, as a start of relationships within the natural world. Verses 12 through 19, we see God continuing to rearrange, not create from nothing, the material for the sun, moon, and stars. You see, God's previous decree distinguishing day and night is now being expressed by these natural bodies in an invisible creation. And what we see him doing here is giving our third, never before seen quality, and that is rulership. You see, the great lights, they're given dominion over the day and night. And what's interesting, and we'll go on this more next week, but there's kind of a visual faithfulness of rulership by the sun, moon, and stars for human rulership that will come. They don't waver in their rulership. They don't complain in their rulership. They don't seek more rulership. Faithfully, they have ruled over their dominions for all of time. Verses 20 through 25, here we now see something new being created. God here is the author is using the word bara, meaning to create from nothing, when creating these animals, these living beings to fill the land and the sea and the air. So what we see here is we see the fourth never before seen attribute, revelation. In verse 22, God says to the animals, go forth, be fruitful and multiply, right? We're seeing now God giving his creation now a verbal command. And then the fifth never before seen attribute is recognition, right? For God to give a verbal command, there has to be the ability to receive it. And maybe even the cognitive awareness or rationale to take that revelation. And so what we see with the animals, especially when God calls them living creatures, it's the Hebrew word nephesh, which is where we get the word soul. Plants aren't called this. Animals are called this. They're greater than the plants. They're given this living creatureness. You see, the plants, they are alive. That's the Hebrew word for chai. But the animals are living creatures. They are nephesh. And what we see in this ex nihilo creation, this creation from nothing, is this thing that allows the animals to receive God revelation, a mind maybe with the cognitive ability for higher interaction with God, and even creation, right? We see the animals looking around us, they interact with creation unlike the plants, unlike anything before. I mean, if you have a pet, your pet is more responsive to you than your plant. So there's something here that was created that doesn't exist before. And the thing that makes sense would be the mind with its abilities. Now, the significance of phase 2 creation and this new degree of complexity with these 5 never before seen attributes, they are needed for creatures to fulfill their God-given purpose, and will be necessary, plus that one more never before seen attribute for human beings to fulfill theirs and to answer our question of why. Why did God create something instead of nothing? And so why did God make phases 1 and 2 in preparation for phase 3 for humans? Now, it may be hard to see how these parts fit together or how these parts are needed for God's creative act. It may be easy, but it may be hard. But I think that's the point. We can't always see how what God is doing now will be used later. His preparation in and for us often goes unnoticed or misunderstood. When I was working in corporate finance for 8 years, I could not see how God was using that situation to give me the skills and the qualities that I would need in ministry later. And maybe you're not aware of how God's preparing you. Maybe you don't know what this preparation time will be used for later, or you may not even think, that God is done with you. However, we're still here, right? People still need discipleship, and we're still imperfect. Therefore, we can have confidence that God is working and preparing us today for what he has prepared for us tomorrow. He's never stopping, right? He's giving us the wisdom today that we need for tomorrow's challenges. So my application is this: embrace today. You don't know what challenges today will be tomorrow's wisdom. And so one first application point is to learn from everything. New experiences, new responsibilities, new roles, new challenges, whatever it may be. Learn as much as you can today in preparation for maybe what God has for you tomorrow. And then number two, embrace the challenges, right? The struggles and the suffering. They grow us, they teach us, they strengthen us for tomorrow's challenges and give us the wisdom and the faith that God can use to help others later.